Welcome to the AskJT podcast, where we simplify tax, finance and business decisions for UK business owners. I'm Justin Turner, an accountant, business owner and author. I'm going to share practical advice and help you run your business more efficiently and keep more of what you earn. What does growth really mean for a small business owner? For years, I thought it meant scale, bigger teams, more turnover, a larger footprint. And to be honest, for a while, I did it. Yeah, I grew my business really effectively, and growth helped me take time off work without the wheels falling off. It meant I could be unwell or I could go on holiday without losing sleep because fundamentally I had a brilliant team behind me who have it covered when I'm not there. But recently, I've started to feel this shift, and I thought this is an interesting podcast subject to actually have a look at, is because it's not because I've got less ambition, but maybe because the system makes it harder and harder to justify beyond that kind of first successful stage of growth. I'm Justin from AskJT, and in this episode, I want to explore how growth is changing for owner-managed businesses, why some of us are choosing to pause instead of push, and how you can make some smarter decisions to protect what you've already built. So let's start off with kind of how growth gave me security, and also it gave me some space. My main day job is running an accountancy firm called Orange Umbrella. I've got 9 members of people who work with me in that business, and that size is brilliant. It gives us great resilience. It means that we can absorb sickness, and it's not just my own sickness. It's if another member of the team is unwell, someone's there to pick it up, and we can make sure that we're always delivering great customer service. It also means that if someone takes a holiday, there's no great panic. We've got procedures written down. We know exactly what we're doing. We've got software systems that other people can see what's happening, so we can absolutely maintain service levels, and that's really important about what growth is going to give me. I can also take a break, and that's something a lot of small business owners don't realise, because when they take a break when the business is small, the income's going to flatline. And I can tell you, when my business was small, I remember when it was just the 3 of us, myself, my wife, and there was a member of support staff working with us. We took a 2-week holiday to France once, and oh my God, it was the most expensive holiday that I think we've ever taken. It wasn't the cost of the holiday, it was the fact that we weren't earning any fees. So yes, I think growth really does matter. It's helped me build a business that can stand on its own 2 feet. It's not going to wobble if something happens to me. And, I think there's a second truth in this. There's a point where the value of more growth starts to actually decline, and it kind of the pressure to push past that point becomes increasingly difficult to kind of go beyond. Let's explore why that be happening. What are the challenges here? And I think we need to talk about some of the challenges that small business owners are facing right now. Firstly, I think there's tax complexity. We've got higher corporation tax rates. We've got this thing called marginal relief. So your first £50,000 you make is at 19%. But the next tranche of money that you're going to make from £50,001 to £250,000, you're paying an effective tax rate of 26.5% on it. That makes it really kind of a high tax corporate environment compared to what we've had. We've seen increases in dividend tax bands. We've got child benefit being repayable from £60,000 to £80,000. We've had personal allowances that have been frozen as well. And if we're getting into higher earnings, like at £100,000, your personal allowance is starting to taper, and that gives you a personal tax rate, effective tax rate, I should be clear on, of 60% as well. Fundamentally, what I'm talking about here is it's an absolute minefield. And I recently did an exercise, and I've written a post about this on the blog, is what would happen if I made another £10,000 in my limited company business and I wanted to withdraw that money. Now I'm at the point, if I earn any more money, I've got to start with kind of repaying my child benefit, which gives me a kind of a really high tax rate. But it means that I have to pay higher rate dividend taxes. The company's got to pay 26.5% effective tax rate. And it would result in me keeping £3,180. So I only get to keep 31.8% of that original £10,000. That's quite a shocking number, really, and it sort of illustrates that if I want to make a lot more money, I've really got to grow the business. I'm kind of almost stuck. Almost the middle ground is a really difficult stage for businesses because of the tax environment as well. It feels like you're working for HMRC. And I saw a very funny Instagram video where someone is sat at a desk working and they pick up this photo off their desk. You don't know what's on the photo, and then the camera zooms in on the photo and it's a logo of HMRC. And I think that there is that sentiment at the moment that, hang on a minute, if we want to grow, it's going to be really, really difficult. And you've got to smash past huge numbers of income tax barriers and corporate tax barriers in order to make it really, really worthwhile. Some of the other things as well that I think are maybe kind of part of the challenges as well is we've got a regulation overload. Just in my own business recently, we've seen changes to anti-money laundering rules. Companies House are reforming how they're going to do everything. You need to ID check everybody. Part of these kind of economic crime rules. I understand what the legislation's trying to do, but there's this constant tinkering with legislation, and it's making it really, really difficult for businesses. For example, the Employers' Rights Bill that's being talked about at the moment. It's very, very difficult. And just to give you an illustration is we've got about 450 clients in our accountancy firm. And last year, when there were all the changes to employers' national insurance, it meant we had to review individually 114 different payrolls and provide individualized advice to those clients. That's kind of crazy. In the past, we've been able to use a formula, and it's making it very difficult for professional advisors to support from a customer service point of view kind of their clients. And it's not just in our industry in accountancy, there's all sorts of things. So I'll give you an example of about apprenticeship reforms as well. We love apprentices in our firm. It's been a really brilliant route for us to go down. But the government are talking about in January, basically funding for level 7 for anyone over the age of 22 is being removed. So it's going to it's becoming harder and more expensive to grow talent that the way we've always done it. And that's not just affecting our business. That's going to affect people like architects, lawyers, professional service type firms doing technical work. That's a problem. And it just sets the scene about where we're at, and it all adds up. Fundamentally, growth no longer feels like something we can kind of just scale into. It feels like you've almost got to create this leapfrog. So, if we're in a point, going back to those tax points, is we've almost got to go from, we're earning £60,000 worth of income before I lose my child benefit, to actually, hang on a minute, I've got huge obstacles in front of me. By 80,000, I've lost my child benefit. Actually, 100,000 to 125, I'm going to lose my personal allowance, so it's 60%. I almost need to leapfrog to £150,000 worth of earnings. And that represents massive growth within my business, and it's just a leap that comes with so much risk. So let's really delve into kind of the next stage of this podcast, which is, what do you actually want from your business? And here's what I've realized is that my joy comes really from working with clients, from solving problems, building relationships, and teaching people what I've learned. And it's why I've built this education business, AskJT. It's why you're listening to this podcast today, because actually it's going to allow me to scale knowledge, not just payroll. And that kind of growth, it feels aligned with kind of what I want to do. It sits well within my value system as well. It means that I can create something that I can be sharing knowledge and providing something back to lots and lots of small business owners, and hopefully be able to create a formula for growth as well. I realised that, it's really important for me to actually work in my business. And there are lots of consultants out there who will be saying, Justin, this is madness. You never say things like that. But I think you've got to go to work to be happy. And I love what I do. I love working with the clients. I just, some of the great feedback that we get, if you go and look at our Google reviews on Orange Umbrella, we've got all 5-star reviews. We've got some lovely, lovely comments of things that we've done for our clients. Why wouldn't I want to go and work in that kind of business? And I think that's the kind of the thing. And to give you an example, is a good friend of mine. He runs a really highly systemized business. They're doing very specialized consultancy type work, and they find specialists, they appoint them. It's very well paid. The contracts don't last very long, but they're well paid when they do. But it's not that person doing the work. That's fine. That's they're building a machine basically that runs on processes. They know how to deliver this work, but I don't necessarily want to build that machine, and I don't necessarily want to build a legacy. Maybe that might be different for my education business. If I could possibly build a machine, but that's not really why I got into doing accountancy work, because that business is about personal connection. It's about high touch. It's about reflecting my values. And I truly believe that I know what a client wants from an accountancy firm. And that the thing that they don't want is really, they don't really care about their tax return and their corporation tax return and their annual accounts. They want the advice that leads them to that point. They want help understanding, how do you manage taking people on? How do we get around these sort of problems with HR? They want more, because in order to actually add up those numbers, all we're doing is looking at the past, and it's much more interesting to work with a client to help them change the now. Yeah, of course, we do all the cash flowing and we do the tax planning and all of that kind of great stuff, but I believe that clients want more than that. And the problem I've got with growth at this moment in time, and the way that my business is structured, is that I think if we went beyond 10 members of staff, we would start to turn into a factory that turns out annual accounts and personal tax returns, for example. And I don't want that for the business as well. And you know what? I think that's okay. There will be lots of people who will disagree with me on that point, but for the moment, I'm happy with that. And I think that's about knowing what I want from my business as well. I work a 4-day week. So does my wife, who I run the business with. And that works really well. I can be there for my kids. I've got a level of growth within the business where I can do that. I've got flexibility. I've got lovely people who work for me. I go to an office where it's got a beautiful view over the river. I have people who I really like working with. I have got clients I really like working with. And I mean, doesn't that sound pretty good? So just the fact that I'm maybe not at a point where I want to grow, and because that growth is going to come with so much risk, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing, I suppose. Let's just talk about kind of growth generally as a kind of up to a point. I believe it is essential for you to grow your business. And this podcast is not about anti-growth. Just to be absolutely clear, it is about recognizing that growth is most powerful when it's purposeful. And growth should give you these kind of key points here. Is the first one, it should give you security. I see so many tradespeople, and we work with so many tradespeople in our accountancy firm, and they're just like, I don't want to take on anyone because staff they're just hassle, aren't they, Justin? And I'm like, no, they're not at all. Yeah, I get it. Taking on people is challenging. It's a different form of challenger. That challenge, it's outside of your skill set, and it's just a skill set that needs to be learned, because actually taking on people is going to provide security ultimately. Because if that person is unwell, their income is just going to stop. Working in trades, for example, is you drop something on your foot and you've broken your foot. You can't work. Had a client recently had a heart attack, needs to go into for kind of major surgery, and they had nothing in place. They had no one working for them, no subcontractors or anything like that, and they suddenly found that they had no income coming in for 8 weeks, and then they're rushing to get back as well. The next thing in terms of growth to a point is about bringing flexibility as well. And flexibility is about things like 4-day working weeks, like I do at the moment. It's been wonderful for me over the years to be able to take my kids to swimming lessons, to be there for them, to be able to just turn up for things that are going on at the school, like school performances and things like that. And I think that getting some growth in there will give you that flexibility. And again, I work with lots of clients as well who, they've not thought about that flexibility, and they're just working flat out, going, "Oh my God, Justin, what am I going to do? I've got no time to think." And that's where growth is really, really important. Again, the next thing is about breathing room as well. Growth to a point is essential. If I didn't have a team, I wouldn't be able to produce this podcast. I wouldn't be able to produce a YouTube video. I wouldn't be able to produce a blog. I'm smart in the way I do it because I can turn it out really quickly. I've got a formula in which I follow. But unless I had people, I wouldn't be able to do it. And actually, setting up an education business is quite a challenging business to set up. It's not something that you can kind of do overnight. I think you've got to be very, very lucky or have a really big following behind you, which I don't have. I can be honest about that. But actually having a team of people behind me, hang on a minute, I've got some breathing room to actually have a think about what I'm going to do. And I can take a couple of hours away each week and go and work that way as well. And that brings me to my final point about why growth is essential, is you can work on your terms. And that's really important, is because, if you want to work on your terms, then you kind of have to build and grow, in order to support those sorts of things, because there are certain things in my business that I dare I say it, I don't enjoy doing them. And things like running payroll. Running payroll is not for me. I don't enjoy doing it. But I've got this lovely woman who works for me, and she's brilliant at it. The clients love her. She seems to quite enjoy running it and doesn't bother her at all. And that's the great thing about growth, is I can maybe get rid of some of the stuff that I don't like doing as well. Because all jobs have got those sorts of things. So you can get to the stuff that you're really, really good at doing. And the stuff I'm really, really good at doing is advising clients and talking to them and kind of being there for them as well, taking them through some really challenging kind of stuff. But look, to a certain point, you get to this point where growth, we've done some of this stuff, like you're maybe where I am at the moment, where you've got a decent team of people behind you, you're feeling really comfortable, your business is successful, and actually growth is going to start to come with diminishing returns unless you kind of radically change your business model. And I think you've got to just pause for a moment and say, is this something that I'm happy with? Is this what I want from my business and my team? And what's my day-to-day role going to look like as well? Because I've worked with so many people where they've grown a business really successfully. I've got some wonderful clients who've done incredibly well, but they've got themselves to a point where they almost don't have a day-to-day role in the business, or they feel completely lost, and they're like, I didn't really ever want to be the leader of a company. I really set out to do this, and they've ended up having to take people on to do that, and then they feel a bit displaced in their business as well, which is it's a bit of a strange thing to say. And that's not always a price worth paying. I think it is worth saying as well that you sometimes can't hold growth back. Growth will just happen. And I think it's also very dangerous for you to try and actually not grow. Take actions to kind of stifle growth as well, because if you start stifling growth, it's a bit of a problem. I once said to one of my colleagues a couple of years ago, saying, do you think we should stop taking on new clients? They were like, no, that's a really bad idea, Justin. And actually, wisdom with hindsight, I think that was really sensible advice that they were giving to me, because actually I think that becomes a problem. You start saying to people, we're not taking anyone on. That soon gets around within the business community, and most of our referrals come from word of mouth. Actually, it's a case of, maybe we need to look at what we've already got. And we probably identified at that stage maybe half a dozen clients who weren't really working for us. They weren't paying their bills properly. They were causing us massive, massive headaches. And we basically had a really grown-up conversation with them and saying, look, this relationship's not working. I think you should kind of move on. So I think you can do look at things slightly differently and frame it up slightly differently as well. So what should you do? That's the next question, isn't it? If you're you are a small business owner wrestling with the similar questions that I've got, and I don't have the answer to all of these things, I just want you to take a moment just to sit back and ask yourself these questions. I want you to think about what your real motivation is. Why are you growing? Are you growing because you want security? If that's the case, brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic. But maybe you're like me and you've already got a successful business and you're now looking at what the next batch of growth would look like. Are you doing it because it's going to make you happy? That's the next thing. I think the other thing you need to do is run the numbers. Don't assume that more revenue means more profit. It sometimes just means more risk. And that's one of the quandaries that I've got, is that, yes, I could absolutely explode my accountancy business and turn it into a 30 to 50 member of staff business. But it means that I'm going to have to go through some really serious risk points. And I don't necessarily think that I want to do that as well. And I think also revisit your lifestyle goals. Is the business supporting them as well? I think that's important for you to kind of consider as well. I think you don't want to compromise on those lifestyle goals. I've been very, very fortunate. I've got this beautiful camper van. I've been all over the country doing triathlon racing. Got a wonderful family. I live in this beautiful home. You sort of catch, if you ever watch any of my YouTube videos, I've got this beautiful stone built converted barn, sort of farmhouse. And these are part of my lifestyle goals of what I want to achieve. But if I'm working every weekend and every evening, then that's not working for me as well. So success isn't always about scale. It's some of it's about freedom as well. And I the kind of next section, I suppose, I want to just kind of have a look at is look at the opportunities that you've maybe got in front of you if you don't want to grow as well. Some of these opportunities are actually we could take more time with our family, and I think that's an important thing. I mean, for me, I've always wanted to work. It really, really energizes me. I've got a business that I'm massively proud of as well. But I think there are some opportunities where actually you can be smart. If you look at what the government are incentivizing at the moment, there are some kind of tax efficient strategies that you can use to maybe not grow the business itself, but actually grow your own personal financial position into a much better situation. So the first one that was on my mind was electric company cars. They've got really minimal benefit in kind tax. They've got great corporation tax reduction. And one of the great things is that the company starts paying for your vehicle and it's not coming out of your own personal cash. So at the moment, my wife and I, because we run the business together, we go out and see clients. We've bought 2 electric cars. We run around in those electric cars. The company pays for those electric cars. We no longer have any car cost coming out of our personal bank account. That's a great personal growth situation to be in, and something that I definitely recommend that you can go and have a look at. I also saw that, there's green grants at the moment for heat pumps. So I've decided to have a heat pump put into my house as well. So the government are offering a £7,500 grant. Yes, they're absolutely expensive things to put in, and it was a big financial overhead for me to do that. But last week, my electricity bill, I do have solar, I should say, a solar and a battery, was only £16. £16. We've got 2 electric cars at home. That's hot water, and we didn't have the heating on, but that's lighting. It's incredible, really, to think that you can do that. And again, that's protecting yourself, and it's personal growth as well. Think about other things like ISAs. The government are giving you allowance every single year to put some money into ISAs that you can protect from tax. Maybe think about buying some funds, well-diversified funds where you're going to get dividends back and they're going to come back into that ISA. Those returns are going to, you're investing in other companies that are giving you returns. And again, it's about personal growth as well. And one of the other things is just on a personal point is, I found myself actually, rather than rolling profit back into the business for further growth, I found myself paying down debt. I'm a huge fan of mortgage overpayments, and I've actually just finished paying my mortgage off, which is a huge, momentous occasion. That's something that I've been working towards for the last 20 years. But it ultimately reduces your monthly outgoings. And actually, I think overpaying on things like mortgages means that if something does go wrong with your business, you're actually positioned into a really, really great place. When you have a small business, it is probably one of the most risky things that anyone can ever own is a small business. But actually, if you're reducing debt and keeping down your monthly outgoings, it's actually you're well protected from market shocks. I think there are some kind of big things around the corner that are coming that, I've been thinking about that I don't know how they're going to affect the economy, such as AI. I'm using AI a lot recently. Like the mastering of this podcast will be done on AI. It will sort out the levels, the decibels, the kind of everything that needs to happen before I can upload it and it being approved. But that's going at quite a rate as well. So I don't think we know what's around the corner. Inflation has been a recent concern. We've got all of these kind of changes that are coming. I don't think anyone really knows what the future is going to hold. So I think by making some smart moves now, like things like electric cars, green tech, protecting returns into ISAs, paying down debt, you're actually positioning yourself really, really well. And actually, what I've been considering recently is I wonder whether once I've kind of really paid down all my debt's gone, is whether I might suddenly start to grow again and use some of that money to push for another period of growth. I don't know really, and I think I wanted to produce this podcast today about maybe being a bit of honesty as well. I'm just one of those small business owners. I've got a lot of experience and I've done a lot of stuff over the years in different industries as well. And I don't necessarily have all the answers and I don't always make the right choices, but I just want to kind of prompt people into kind of asking questions, I suppose, and thinking about the choices that they're making as well. I want people to be happy. I want them to have control of their business as well. Anyway, thank you for listening to my podcast today, which is the AskJT podcast. And I hope this episode has resonated with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can find loads of other stuff that I've kind of education content on my blog, which is askjt.co.uk/blog. Or if you're looking for my YouTube, you can find me at AskJT on YouTube. And there's loads of videos on there about all sorts of different things that you might be interested with your business. Anyway, thanks for listening and I'll see you at the next one. Thanks. Bye. Thanks for listening to the AskJT podcast. Subscribe for a weekly episode. And if you found this useful, share it with a fellow business owner who might benefit.